Hello, today is February 28th, 2024. I'm Kai Liu from Georgetown University. It is a great honor today to interview Professor Chia-Ling Chien as part of the IEEE Magnetics Society Oral History Project. Chia-Ling is a pioneer in magnetic nanostructures, superconductivity, and spintronics. Dr. Mark Stiles recently commented on Chia-Ling's IEEE Magnetics Society Achievement Award. He noted that Professor Chien has been an innovator and discoverer of intricate physical properties of new magnetic materials and nanostructures. His sustained contributions over the past few decades have been broad as well as deep, impacting many areas of materials research and condensed matter physics, especially magnetism, spintronics, and superconductivity. In 2022, I had the pleasure of working with Chia-Ling Chien, Jeff Childress, Grace Lin, Ruben Sommer, and Minzhong Wu to put together this special issue for JMMN entitled Advances in Nanomagnetism and Spintronics. The front cover is a word art created by Le Yizhu and Chia-Ling Chien that illustrate the various research areas Chia-Ling has made contributions to. Dr. Sanveda kindly wrote the foreword. He noted that Chia-Ling has made numerous discoveries in magnetic nanostructures, superconductivity, and spintronics, and that this special issue was put together in honor of his sustained contributions to the field and in celebration of Chia-Ling's 80th birthday. Our revered physics Nobel laureate, Professor Albert Fert, wrote that Chia-Ling is one of the few names on my top list of bright physicists I have known during my career. He is not only bright and creative, but also you can always trust what he says or writes. And his work is exceptionally rigorous. I will not list all the seminal results he obtained in the field of magnetism, superconductivity, and spintronics. I will only summarize them by stating that he had a strong influence on important developments in all these fields. And this, again, was from Professor Albert Fert. And I had the privilege of doing my PhD work under Chia-Ling's guidance in this very building. It was actually more than 30 years ago, Chia-Ling, we met, and you interviewed me for admission to Hopkins. It was a truly life-changing moment for me. And today it's very special for me to come back to Hopkins and turn the table on you to do this interview. And so I get to ask the tough questions. Thank you for being here, Chia-Ling.
Thank you, Frank, for coming all the way from Washington to Johns Hopkins. I'm delighted to see you again and answer any questions you might have.
Great. It's always fun to be back at Hopkins. So let's start first with your family background and early life. Please state your full name and date and place of your birth.
Okay, my name is Chia-Ling Chien. My Chinese name is Chen Jialing. I was born in Chongqing during the war with Japan, and when I was a little over 4 years old, my family took me to Taiwan. So I grew up in Taiwan. There I finished my entire education up to undergraduate before coming to this country.
Please describe your parents and their influence on you. What did they do?
Well, my family maybe is not a typical Chinese family. We adopted Western education very early. Both my grandfather have studied abroad. My paternal grandfather studied in Japan. My maternal grandfather graduated from Yale. And all my aunt and uncle have studied in this country. Both my parents graduated from Cornell. So I'm the third generation have studied in this country. So we are very familiar with Western culture, Western music, Western literature, as well as English.
When you were growing up, I understand was during the war, so did you have to move around from place to place?
Yes, well, I was born in Chongqing, so I actually did not move around much, other than moving from Chongqing to Shanghai after the war.
In fact, your name, Chia-Ling, is
my name is named after a river that flows through Chongqing. And so there are many kids born during that time with the same first name that I have. My aunt, all the ones I know are girls. I'm the only one that is not a girl with that name.
And what would you say was the family influence on education on you?
Well, my parents are very liberal. They do not have high demand on expectation of us. They only require us to do one thing, to try our best. And that's all that they ask for.
So you had the freedom to explore your own interests.
We have a lot of freedom and free time to explore other things, and we did.
And you also had siblings. What kind of interests did they have?
Well, I have one younger brother and one younger sister, and likewise. We all have very pleasant and happy childhood because we have a lot of free time to explore on our own, by reading, by going out, meeting friends, etc.
When you were in elementary school to middle school and high school, what were your favorite subjects?
Well, I like math. I don't like social studies. So very early on, I'm closer to physical science. Perhaps not engineering, but closer to mathematics and physics.
Was that related to the field that your parents studied or separate?
No, my father was in engineering, civil engineering. My mother is child psychology, so she knows us well.
Mm-hmm. You also mentioned your grandparents. I know your family were very prominent. I didn't know just how prominent until recently. And your maternal grandfather, for example, Dr. Zhenting Wang Zhenting 先生, he held very prominent positions. He was Minister of Finance, Minister of Justice, acting Premier of the Republic of China government in the 1920s, and also the ambassador to the United States in the 1930s. He was one of the key members of the Chinese delegation to Paris after World War I in negotiation of Treaty of Versailles, which coincided with the famous May 4th movement because of the unfair language in the treaty. Your grandfather was the key member that refused to sign on the treaty. It was a very gutsy move.
They took a great deal of risk.
Of course.
And they finally did the right thing.
Yes, it took a tremendous courage and spine. So I was really at awe to learn this part of the history, and he was certainly a figure I read about in the history books. Growing up, did you have any interactions with him?
Well, I was too young. Okay, I saw him a few times from my childhood to middle school, and then he passed away in Hong Kong while I was in middle school. So I was too young to interact with him talking about serious things. Mm-hmm. So there are really no substantive discussion between us.
Was there a certain core value, internal caliber that runs in the family that had an influence on you growing up?
Well, there are an unwritten motto within the family that is, we always want to honor our parents. We don't want to do things that embarrass our parents. And we do the best we can, and there are no high expectation on us.
Mm-hmm. I also know that Dr. Zhenting Wang, he is regarded as the father of the Chinese Olympic movement.
Yes.
He founded the Chinese Athletic Association, 中华体育协会, and he was the first member of the Olympic Committee from China.
Yes.
Did sports play any prominent role in your family?
Well, we did not emphasize playing sports. He actually told all of his children and grandchildren, you must learn how to swim. That's the basic survival kit. Okay, that's the very least you must know. Right.
I remember a story you used to say that, did you at one point almost drown?
Well, that was before I learned how to swim, when I was very young. Okay, I was 2 years old. I have so many accidents. My mother was convinced I could not survive. So, but I did.
Maybe then we move on to your undergraduate education.
Yes.
Where did you receive your undergrad?
Okay, I went to an undergraduate school in Taiwan called Donghai University. And that was the first liberal arts university sponsored by the Protestant Church from America. We have a very small student body. Every year, the school admit only 180 students. And so each department take in about 50 students. So all these classes are small classes, and they emphasize general education. So we not only have to study physics, if we have physics, we also have to study social science, arts, music, all the other things, just like the liberal education. Mm-hmm. So many of the teachers actually is American. All the English teachers are American. Many physics, mathematics teachers also are foreign, Americans or British. Mm-hmm. So that really broadens our horizon. Okay, we were exposed to many new things, how to think about various things rather than just take things from the book. Okay?
Yes.
So it's a very influential education. I was very fortunate to have that.
Uh-huh. Were you already focusing in physics at that time?
Well, okay, I know I'm closer to science. And I don't like chemistry because the smell was terrible. I don't like biology because there are so many names you have to remember. So it's either going to be mathematics or physics. Mm-hmm. Okay. I eventually chose physics.
Did you have any influential professors that impacted your decisions at the time?
Well, I can remember one professor who was very mean to the students. So that gave me a lasting impression. I actually told myself, if I ever become a professor, I will never be like this man. So mean to his students. Mm-hmm. So that changed my attitude right there. Yes. In my undergraduate years.
Uh-huh. And mean is very different from being tough, which we'll discuss.
Well, tough I can understand. Mean is just not called for.
Right. Did you do anything for fun when you were in college?
Well, actually, at one time I was considered seriously to become a music major.
Yes.
But I did not have enough talent, so I changed to physics.
You're being very modest. When did you start doing music? When you were very young?
Well, in grade school.
Grade school,
So I learned the piano about 10 years ago. Uh-huh. So I was thinking about going to music, but my music teacher convinced me I did not have enough talent. So physics is easier.
We are certainly very happy you made that choice. I guess at the time in Taiwan you had to do military service.
Yes, I served in the military for 1 year.
Mm-hmm. Your sports ability also helped you somewhat.
Yes, because I am taller than most of the people there. I play basketball. That gave me considerable amount of privileges. A lot of time I can stay at the basketball court practicing instead of doing other tougher jobs.
That's wonderful. After that, then you came to the United States for graduate school.
Actually, I applied to a number of schools, and at the end, I have to decide between two, UCLA or Carnegie Mellon. At that time, it's called Carnegie Tech. I have no idea which one to go. It turned out my cousin, undergraduate at Carnegie Tech, so I chose under Carnegie Tech. That's how I made the selections.
Did you start out doing theory or experiment?
I started out doing theory.
How did you make
I
this
worked
switch?
with a very famous theory professor. He gave me a problem, so I worked on it day and night. And for about a year, I got ulcer. So I went to see the doctor. The doctor told me, you better change your job, whatever you're doing, okay?
It's
You
too
have a
painful.
serious ulcer problem. So I switched to doing experiment. So I lost a year there, right?
Because of the lifestyle of being a theorist, wasn't too.
Well, the theorist, you think about a problem, you work on a problem day and night.
Yeah.
Experimentalists, there are many things you have to take care of.
Yes.
So you don't get bogged down one difficulty.
Right. But that is not an easy move for most people from.
Well, it is a pretty hard one. In
Yes.
fact, there's a junior faculty in my professor's group. He taught me literally from ground up. He showed me here are many screwdrivers. They're all different.
Yeah.
This kind, that kind. So I learned from that point.
Yes. Yeah, certainly hearing from you talking about your transition from being a theorist to experimentalist, that was very inspiring to a student like myself. That
Yeah, so if I can be experimentalist, anybody can.
not necessary, but it was very inspiring to tell you the truth. Looking back, was that experience beneficial to your career? That you were into theory?
Theory is a different game, okay? Maybe if I stay longer in theory, I will develop in somewhat different, but it was only a short time. My stomach simply could not take that, okay? So became an experimentalist. It's a very difficult transition,
Yes.
but it's necessary.
Yeah, certainly from our perspective, we often hear your discussions and talks, your
Yes.
physics picture crystal clear. That was perhaps have something to do with this.
That I basically learned from my advisor. Okay,
Yes.
he influenced me more than anyone else. Okay.
Maybe you can tell us about your advisor.
Okay, my advisor is Sergio Di Benedetti. Okay, and he's a nuclear physicist. Okay. He did postdoc with Frederick Julia, who was Madame Curie's son-in-law. So I learned many things from him. I never have taken any course from him, but he taught me how to do science. Okay? For example, he said, science is never established by proof. Science is established when you cannot disprove it. Then you establish science. To prove it's too easy. I take a ride from your car, I got a headache, so I can say taking a car ride causes headache. I mean, that can be easily disproved. Okay? So changes everything, the way you look at things. So every paper you read, he said, it's an opinion expressed by the author.
Right.
Ultimately, anything important, you have to decide. You have to make the final judgment. So I remember he gave me an example. Your arm hurts? The doctor said, take an aspirin. Well, that's not too big a risk. You can take it. Suppose the doctor say, you need to cut your arm off. Wait a minute. You need another opinion.
Right.
Maybe 5 doctors said they need to take their arm off. You still want other opinion because the consequence is too great. So when anything important, you have to decide. Don't trust anyone else. Okay.
Yes.
So there are many things like this I learned from him that I have benefited all my life.
Mm-hmm. So the true science has to stand the test of time.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So he actually is very famous in this field. He's called the father of positron annihilation. So he does nuclear physics, hyperfine interaction, etc. I was very lucky to have him.
Certainly, completely understand. How did you choose him to be your advisor?
Okay, I approached a few professors when I switched, okay? He struck me as something totally different. So the first thing he asked me to do is, can you think of a project you would like to work on? So I spent a few weeks, I found the project, I explained, I like to do this. He said, why? Why do you want to do that? I said, no one has done it before. Well, he said, no one has smelled cyanide gas, all right? If he said, do you want to do that? You must have a better reason, okay? Yes. So instantly, I learned, if you want to do any research, it must have a very important reason.
Yes.
Not because it hasn't been done or you just want to explore, okay? So things like this, I learned many things from him.
Yeah, that's definitely a great lesson, which we'll talk about later when you choose your own research.
So it's my own fortune to have him. Okay.
Yes, I certainly appreciate the tremendous value of having a great advisor. I can't help but notice, look at this picture, you look like a movie star.
I'm only tall, that's all.
I heard a story, maybe you can confirm or deny it for us, that in one occasion you took some guests to the inner harbor of Baltimore and you were approached by some scout in the movie industry who tried to get you.
That is not true.
That's not true.
That is not true.
Okay, we debunked that rumor, but we can certainly understand where it came from. You could certainly be in the film industry. You are in fact in the filmmaking business. You're making interesting films.
Yes, different kind of film.
Yes. I understand you graduated in 1972,
Yes.
and I know this was a very important year for you.
Yes, that is the few months before that, and I got married.
Yes. And this is a picture of you and Christina.
So unfortunate for her, I often joke in the marriage vow, they say for richer and for poorer. So every bride at least has an illusion she may marry a rich husband, but not a physicist. Physicist is only poor or less poor. But I kept my vow till death do us part. So we're still married.
And the beautiful children, Debbie and David.
Yeah, that's the gift of life.
Yes. I understand this was also the year you first came to Hopkins.
Well, this is next year. I came to Hopkins on January 1st, 1973. And people talk about difficult time. That was the difficult time. In fact, the most difficult time I know. There were energy crises, there were global depression. Simply, there are very few jobs, okay? So I was fortunate to have two offers. I picked one that came to Hopkins.
That was a postdoc position.
That was the postdoc position. It turned out hard time also can turn into a better time, because during hard time, many competitors switch field. They leave the field. So 2 years later, then you found out many competitors have disappeared. So you actually have a better time. Okay? That you never can tell during hard time.
And what did you work on during those early years?
During early years, I'm extending the hyperfine interactions. Hyperfine interactions always measure a quantity, which is a product of nuclear property and product of solid state. Nuclear property, if you stick with the same nuclear, is always the same. But the solid state properties are different for every solid. So in fact, it's most useful to study solid state.
Yes.
And through this end, I enter magnetism. Okay? So it's through the hyperfine interactions.
And the Mossbauer effect.
And the Mossbauer effect, the most popular element is iron.
Yes.
Iron is a major constituent of magnets.
Yes.
So that's how I gradually move into magnetism.
I know that you stayed on as faculty here. I know you always tell us that.
Well, that's an anomaly. I should never have stayed on because Harvard Physics has an unwritten rule. They never hire their graduate, they never hire their postdoc. So I knew when I came, I would soon leave. But in a few years I was here, they suddenly realized they have atomic physics, they have nuclear physics, they have high energy physics. They don't have anybody in condensed matter physics. It's a new field. They got to hire someone. So either they put an ad in the newspaper and spend a year looking for one, or they hire this guy. He's already here.
Yes.
So this is how I got hired. So
what did you start with? Your startup at the time?
Well, I started because I'm not from outside. And the dean and the chair were both against breaking the tradition. So the dean gave me a very bad startup, $2,000. So my startup was $2,000. And it took me 10 years to build my lab.
To build up everything from scratch.
Yeah, build up from everything from scratch. Yes.
Yeah, I certainly saw firsthand all the home-built instruments.
Yes, and also I learned awful lot.
Yes.
Because I have to build things from scratch.
You know how it works.
So I had to learn many things.
What the problems were.
Yes.
That started the next phase of your career as a faculty member here at Hopkins. What did you work on next?
At that time, there's a new field. It's called amorphous magnetism. So it's a magnetism that turns out does not depend on the lattice. And there's a lot of industrial applications, possibility, and also they have very fundamental questions. For example, does spin wave exist in amorphous ferromagnet? That was a question we're trying to address. Okay? So I gradually becomes more and more in magnetism. And so through these, okay, so amorphous magnetism, there's superconductivity. So, since you asked some jokes, so let me tell you a joke.
Please do.
In '83, there's a famous professor from a famous university came to Hopkins to give a colloquium. So we had lunch. He asked me, "What do you do?" I said, "I work in magnetism." He said, "Magnetism is dead."
Already.
What else you are working on? I said, "I work on superconductivity." Superconductivity is also dead. And as you know, 3 years later, high TC was discovered, GMR was discovered. So we now know that guy was dead wrong. Of course, I don't mention his name.
Did you work on both high TC?
I work on both high TC and magnetism. Sometimes more in each one field, sometimes more in the other, sometimes together. Okay, so.
I know your group usually has a relatively small to medium size, never big. And in the heydays of the high TC, I mean, people work in big groups. We have armies of students. How did you manage at the time?
Well, we don't have a big group, but we work long hours.
Yes.
At that time, I have only a few students. I told them, this is once in a lifetime experience. You must participate. But you cannot write a thesis in high TC superconductor because it moves too fast. So you drop whatever you're doing You work for a while, have some fun, and before going back to it. So we all have shift. Each one of them takes shift, 96 hours a week. That means day and night, the lab never sleeps. There's always somebody in the lab. Okay, this is how we compete. And we did some interesting thing there. We show in the high TC the copper oxygen plate is essential.
Yes.
The copper oxygen chain is not, even though at that time many people considered chain very important. So.
Great. And as you mentioned, it also coincided with discovery of antiferromagnetic interlayer exchange coupling, then GMR.
Yes.
And
that is a really exciting time.
Yes.
Because when interlayer coupling was discovered, every group, experimental group that has the film facility is doing interlayer coupling.
That's right.
Okay. Nobody measured resistance. So when the Babbage Alberford paper came out, I nearly fell out of my chair. Okay, so they saw the huge effect in iron chromium. Yes. So I immediately ran to the lab and measured one of the interlayer couplings. Also saw very large resistance, not as large as they. Yeah. But other people have later on find the same thing. So Alberford actually has his eyes on this problem since his thesis day. He knew this problem. Yes. Very early on. He eventually found it. All the rest of them simply have no clue after it's discovered, so we measured.
You studied this also in different systems, in granular solids.
Yeah, because early on, some theorists claimed GMR is a multi-layer effect.
Right.
Okay? And through my previous experience, we know how to make metallic granular solid. And we show that granular solid can equally show very large GMR, almost as large as the multi-layer. Therefore, its multi-layer is irrelevant. It's the inhomogeneous magnetic structure that makes the difference.
Yes. So you can have a spin disorder in different settings, such as the granular solids.
Yes.
And that led to your discovery of the GMR in granular solids in the early 90s.
So I remember that time when we were writing the paper, Alberford just happened to be stopping over. So he actually saw the manuscript we were writing. He actually liked it.
Wow, that's a great history. So that's the beginning of this exciting era of spintronics. And
last 30 years.
Yeah.
At least.
Right, but you were right there since the very beginning, and you worked on many problems, and also both in nanomagnetism, spintronics, and beyond. You also studied magnetic nanowires grown by electrodeposition.
Yes.
And one of the things you did soon after was point contact and RF reflection.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, this was a technique invented by people at NRL. And it was using a superconductors and RF reflections. It turned out that technique allowed you to measure the spin polarization. So spin polarization turned out to be a very important quantity in the magnetic system, but very hard to measure. Right? So, and RF reflections turned out to be one very good way to measure that. So with that technique, we measure many magnetic material, including the common iron, cobalt, nickel, which has a polarization around 50%, and also some so-called half metal.
Right.
Was near 100% spin polarization.
Yes.
The largest we have ever measured is chromium dioxide. It is 98.6%, which is the only reason it's not 100% is not we are not at AT equals 0. Okay, so there is it is truly a half metal.
Yes. And you also worked on many other topics such as exchange bias.
Yeah, which has interesting physics,
Yes.
other than being useful
useful.
technology.
Right. And you did one of the first demonstrations of voltage-controlled magnetic tunnel junctions.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about
Well,
your work?
okay, so that has many variations. Okay, so in the first early on, you can use magnetic field to switch tunnel junction, and of course, magnetic field is not site specific. You want a site specific, you have to use current. So spin transfer torque is one way. You can use current to switch. Switching a tunnel junction turn out the current density is very large.
Yes.
Right? So an alternative way is trying to use voltage, so to lower the current, switching current density.
Yes.
So that's how the voltage control device was invented. Okay, so this thinking is along those lines. Okay,
Right.
of course, in reality, you have to experiment many different parameters to find the right combinations. Okay, so fortunately, in every one of these cases, I have some very capable students or postdoc. I have very few students, as you mentioned earlier, but they're all very good. Okay, so that's how we can still compete with much larger groups.
Mm-hmm. Certainly, it's extremely important, especially in today's post-Moore's law era, where energy consumption in electronics is such a major problem.
Yes.
Yeah. After that, you also worked on many leading problems of the time, such as spintronics.
Yes.
Can you comment on your effort in that area?
Well, it started as a curiosity. I have never done anything thermal. Okay, it's using magnetic field, using current, using various things, but never thermal. So thermal is something new to us, at least new to me. Everything that happens, I wanted to know why. Okay, because we're so new to this field. And this is how we got into spin color electronics and found out some leading results was actually not as it is. We found out as something else, okay? So gradually we got into the field. So it started out as a curiosity because this is something we did not know, and that's why we want to explore. And we found many new things in spin color electronics. Okay, so as I said, I'm very lucky. We launch into many things, many areas, and we managed to get something out of that.
Mm-hmm. And I understand your latest efforts involve the spin triplet superconductivity. What's the current?
Well, it's an old question. Spin triplet superconductivity is supposed to exist, but it's very hard to confirm. And people have been using the same set of technique for the last 30, 40, 50 years, using upper critical field, unusual penetration depth, NMR night shift, and claim certain spin triplet superconductivity. It turned out to be not so, right? And the reason is, all of these techniques, we conclude, they're really looking for anomaly deviating from BCS theory. But non-BCS superconductor, not necessarily spin triplet. Spin triplet requires something much more than that. You have to find conclusive evidence intrinsic to spin triplet. So we found a few techniques that can tell, right? For example, if you can measure the superconducting gap has R parity, then it's a spin triplet. There are other techniques we're developing which can measure these specific questions. So through these, we discover how to unequivocally identify spin triplet superconductor. Okay? Again, we want to be different from convention. Okay, everybody is doing this way without clear successors. We want to do something different.
Yeah. So this leads to my next question. You worked on many different questions, important questions at the time, and you always been at the cutting edge of the research. You're either the first or among the first to tackle a problem. How did you choose the research topic?
Well, I would say we're lucky. We have very good student and postdoc, and so that's why we're fortunate. Okay, many things we work on, at least for me, when we started, I actually knew very little. Sometimes I knew nothing.
Yes.
Therefore, I wanted to know these questions. How can they be answered? Using what method? So perhaps I have less baggage as the people because I know so little, and therefore I can ask the questions in a different way.
Another perspective, perhaps, is one is time to take on a new problem, because sometimes we get used to our comfort zone. We keep doing the same things.
Yes.
I think you have told us over time that it's good to change topic every now and then.
Yes.
What do you think will be the kind of opportunity for young people to look out for to catch the newest, the latest trend?
Of course, I don't know where the new problems lies, but I think we just open our eyes and look at some problems which do not have a satisfactory answer, and perhaps we can find new problems to work on. One of the reasons, perhaps even you didn't know, why my students work on multiple problems, because I have a tragic experience myself. When I was working on my thesis, a year into my thesis, already an experimentalist, and at that time there was no internet. We went to the library to scan the latest literature from the journal. When I saw that paper, the title of the paper was my thesis.
Uh-huh.
It says, Magnetic First Order Transition in European Metal.
Yes.
That actually was my thesis.
Uh-huh.
Somebody at Bell Lab already did it. Which means everything that I spent on that thing
Wasted.
come to nothing. I have to start over again. So that's why when I start supervising students, I never want them to work on a single problem. I don't want this to happen to them. Mm-hmm. So they ended up working on multiple things. Fortunate for them, they never got schooled because I simply did not want that to happen to them. Mm-hmm. So that may be one reason my student did more things than other students.
So this leads to another important topic all the researchers need to deal with, that is competition.
Yes.
Right. So you work on an important problem, and there's bound to be many other people working on the same thing.
Yes.
And how do you handle the competition? How do you deal with competitors?
There's not much you can do. There are many smart people around, smarter than we are. Okay. And we just hope that they don't work as hard as we do, and they don't think about the special angle we're looking at.
Yes.
And there's no other way to prevent that.
Yeah. And maybe another interesting angle is how you work with or deal with competition. I've heard the stories about you having some famous argument at APS March meeting or something similar. And I know you're not afraid of standing up for what you believe in. And at the end, I think there was a good ending, but maybe you can elaborate.
Well, okay. All those arguments usually is because when certain phenomena occur, you measure. What does it mean? Does it really mean what you say it is, or it means something else?
Yes.
Because you measure a voltage, you measure where does the voltage come from? There are various ways to test. Right? As I said very earlier, Science is not by proving. You have to find various angles and to reveal, is it really this is what you think it is? Okay. So we found out the answer is no. Different from other people. So other people, of course, were very mad, very unhappy. Okay? But this is science. We want to find what is the truth. Right? So it's not personal at all. Okay?
Yes.
It's just a scientific argument. This is very healthy for science.
Yes, I know the story of between you and Professor Jack Bass. You had a
Yeah,
very
yeah.
heated discussion.
We remain very good friends.
Yes.
Okay? We have scientific disagreement. Personally, we are very good friends.
Yes, that was very inspiring. Over the years, looking back at all the scientific problems that you worked on, what do you think was the most important part of your scientific legacy?
I don't really have a legacy. I work on various problems, and I have some results and some success in some. I also have some failures in others that you don't know. But it's the normal life of a scientist, right? I consider myself extremely lucky. Okay. Every day I come to the office to do what I like to do. Johns Hopkins even pays me to do that. Oh, of course, I have to teach some courses. I have to get my grant money. But where else can I get a job like that? So I think we are doing research because we like doing research. We're not really looking for any payoff, any glory, except. Okay, so.
Do you remember a best day in your ever in your lab? One of the most exciting results you discovered.
No, I remember bad days.
Oh, bad days. That's one.
Yeah, that I have. I don't have any particularly good days because very often is multiple results establish certain facts rather than a single measurement. Okay, so I don't have these fantastic moments in life.
Also, from your perspective, how has the scientific enterprise evolved from your earlier career days to present?
Okay, I think the speed of publication is extremely fast nowadays than early days. Almost any discovery, whatever it is, very shortly, somebody will say, I observed the same thing. Sometimes it's a real discovery, somebody observed the same thing. Sometimes it's a bogus thing. Okay, we know many famous examples. For example, cold fusion. Okay, cold fusion. I remember. Right after that, there are many people saying that they also observed cold fusion. That's maybe too extreme. Even in our own field, in magnetic or speech phenomena, there are new predictions. Somebody said, I observed it. Or somebody measured a new effect claim, and soon there are other follow-up. And look carefully. Did we actually observe such a fact? That's a different question. Yes. I think people jump to the conclusion very quick, very, very swift, too swift.
So it goes back to what you mentioned earlier about the advice from your advisor.
Yeah,
the science.
You really have to scrutinize things very carefully before you come to certain conclusions. So.
Yes. You mentioned multiple times your students, postdocs. What do you think was most important for their success?
Because they are smart. Because they work hard.
You're the common denominator.
Well, that's a coincidence.
What was the most important thing you try to convey to your group members?
Well, I basically want them to do high quality research. Okay, so they back up everything they claim in their papers, and they actually carefully thought about the whole thing. So, and they have done very well, right? I don't have many students, okay? I've been to Hopkins more than 40 years, but I only produced 21 students. Every one of them is good.
This is a picture from your 70th birthday celebration. Maybe you can tell our audience what this represents.
Well, every PhD student on the day of the defense, they open a bottle of champagne, they will sign, and the empty champagne bottle will remain in the lab. Okay, so there are only so few. Okay, there are not many. I have college any given time, they have 15 students. Okay, I cannot handle that. I think I like the small group setting. We can chat anytime we want. And if we could start doing something that afternoon, because the group is so small, right? Mm-hmm. And on a large, within a large group setting, that would not be possible. Okay? But this is different. Everyone is different. Some people can handle very large groups. Some people cannot.
Mm-hmm. And this was a memorable birthday card, again from 2011. The design was led by Chia-Ling Chien. Then there you go. There's a picture of you. In fact, this is actually my first impression of you. Probably many people's first impression of you. When was this taken? Do you still remember?
I think it's around 1985.
Uh-huh. So it was a very impressive, Chia-Ling, and also I think to many of us initially a little bit intimidating, but we changed that impression soon after. And then this is a beautiful musical notes put together by the papers of former group members, and the Chinese character of longevity in the middle, and with Chia-Ling's favorite musical instrument, the piano. And then on the outside, all the favorite sayings that Chia-Ling you used to say.
So some of the detail only now I recognize.
You recognize. So, for example, I think this one had a long-lasting impact on me. You either don't do it or you got to do it right. And at the time, we even had a top 10 list of your favorite sayings. Do you remember our number one vote?
No.
So it was that. So what's new? This creative card really symbolized the relationship you have with your group members. You have high expectations, and you maintain lifelong bonds with them afterwards, myself included. What's your secret in maintaining that kind of a bond with your group members?
Well, look, I consider my students is someone between my son and my nephew. Okay, so they're very close to me because I worked with them for quite a few years and see that they are very successful. I have no grandchildren, so they have children, so they are my grandniece and nephews. It's just, I just like to remember and get in touch with people I know. We spent a few years together, and these are very precious moments.
Yes. We are certainly most fortunate to have you as the advisor. During your career, work aside, how did you balance family obligations?
It's very hard. Okay. Early on, when I was starting out, and I work at night as well. So I'm sure my wife was scared to death at home, alone. And I did not have enough time with my children by the time I realized they're only 18, okay? So I still have very close relationship with my children. So I enjoy seeing them every year. If they don't come here, I go see them.
Yes.
Right? So. But it's a very hard thing to do. Okay, you want to work very hard,
Yes.
but you also don't want to neglect what your other obligations are. That's always very hard. Okay?
Yes, indeed. What do you like to do in your spare time? Still
Well,
play
I
piano?
play some music
Yes.
and to keep myself sane, because in music you can see the most beautiful things
Yes.
in life. May not be in reality, but in a different world. Okay, so that part I treasure very much. My favorite actually is Chopin. Okay, so Rachmaninov is too hard because his hands are too big. So I have trouble playing his music. He can reach 13, I can only reach 9. Therefore, I'm at a disadvantage.
Did you also do things outside of the scientific community? I believe you are also involved with your church.
Yes. But that comes from my long history from my mother's side.
This is the IEEE Oral History Project, so I want to also bring up your connection with IEEE. Obviously, you won many awards. Including the IEEE Magnetics Society Distinguished Lecturer Award and the IEEE Magnetics Society Achievement Award. When did you start your interaction with the Magnetics Society?
Well, okay, I have interaction with magnetism conference since my graduate student days.
The MMM.
MMM. So that has a close connection with IEEE. I know many of the people at IEEE. So that's the connection. So IEEE Magnetics Society plays a very important role, especially nurturing the younger generations. Okay,
Yes.
to be part of this. Okay. So they play a very important role, whether it's the distinguished lecturer or the summer school or many other activities they do. Okay. The health of a society, especially a magnetic society, really depends on people doing the research.
Yes.
If we can make accomplishment, make discovery, make application, there will be more people interested in this. Okay, in a magnetism conference, which IEEE Magnetics Society always sponsored. I remember in the mid 1980s there were crises because the attendance is dropping.
Yes.
At the time, the only excitement was permanent magnet, neodymium iron boron. There are no other things exciting. So the attendance, I remember, dropped to something like 600. Okay, then fortunately GMR and the walls came up, so now it really blossom.
Yes.
If we feel that is reducing again, well, everybody got to work harder to make discovery in magnetic related activity so it can go to new height. This field really depends on all the researchers.
Yes. Would you have any advice for young people just starting their career in terms of choosing their career paths?
Well, I'm not a wise man to make. I think the most important advice I can give them is you want to work in a field you really like. If you don't like this field, no matter how popular it is, you're not going to make important contributions. You really have to be interested in this. Then you can do good work. Then you are willing to sacrifice. Then you are willing to work long hours just to get something significant. Okay, so I think personal interest is more important than anything else.
Mm-hmm. So for yourself, what are your current focus area? What excites you the most?
Well, okay, most of the time we only see things that work. There are things also that did not work. So I'm thinking of a few problems which may or may not work. Of course, if they don't work, you'll never hear from me again. If they work, you might.
Uh-huh. Great. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you would like to comment on?
Well, I don't know. We have covered a lot of things. Yes.
Okay. And thank you very much, Chia-Ling, for your time and your wisdom. I'll use this poster. This was prepared by Sun Xiang Huang on the occasion of your 80th birthday. And we wish you continued health and happiness. Thank you very much, Chia-Ling.
Well, thank you, Carl.